Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Increasing T&D Asset Reliability with a Map-Centric Approach for Maximo. My name is Lindsay, and I'm our Customer Success Manager at Geo Nexus. I also have our President, Skip Heiss, with me today. He'll be giving the presentation. And we also have Akshata Nayak, who will be our webinar facilitator today. Before we get started, I want to go through some housekeeping. If you have any difficulties using the WebEx, please use the chat feature. It should be in the top right. And you can get assistance from Akshata. She can help you out. If you have any questions about the content from our presentation, please use the Q&A feature to ask your question, and we're going to try to get to as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. And Skip, you can go ahead and take it away.
Great, thanks Lindsay, and thank you everyone for joining today for this webinar. I'm going to go through a quick agenda and then a few slides, and we're going to show some technology live today as well, which is pretty exciting. So without any further ado, we'll get rolling here. One of the things I want to talk about today is some challenges that we're seeing in the industry relating to managing of T&D, specifically T&D assets in Maximo, and some of the benefits that a technology that we provide called GeoWorx Office can lend itself to helping with some of these challenges that we're seeing in this space. We'll move into some demonstrations. We have prepared for you today 3 specific scenarios that we want to go through. The first one is assigning a work order to the proper asset. So making sure that the asset that we actually worked on is what's assigned to the work order so that we can do proper roll-up of costs and material to the right asset. The second use case that we want to look at is placing work at the correct location on a linear asset. We may have something that's a linear asset like a long pipe, right? We want to understand where specifically we did that work along that linear asset. And then the third use case we want to talk about is eliminating potential for duplicate work orders and service requests within Maximo. We will leave time for questions and answers, and throughout this webinar, like Lindsay mentioned, feel free to use the Q&A tool in your webinar GUI to pose some questions to us. A little bit about Geo Nexus technology. The mission of our company, the core focus of our company, is to ensure integrity and reliability of enterprise data. There's a lot of data throughout the organization, and much of this data is related to assets and work orders and service requests. And a lot of this data is also managed by multiple business systems. And so we provide technology that helps us understand and make sure that that data is accurate, reliable, and the integrity is maintained to support the business. And we do this through fully supported software that provides easy and reliable system integration, right? So that's our core focus here at Geo Nexus. When you look at a utility or a municipal utility, government, public work organizations, we use a lot of different business systems to manage information. GIS systems is natural for managing our maps, our infrastructure in a spatial context. We have CIS systems for managing our customers, our service premise billing information, EAM like Maximo for working assets, outage management systems, and mobile technology. So there's a lot of different enterprise systems within the organization, and data is shared across these systems. So for example, address data is a common data set that we need in GIS to be able to perform geocoding, be able to see where our customers are located. Of course, that address information and that service premise information in our CIS system for billing and service requests to go out and do installs and turn on and turn off of service. Well, service address is also really helpful in our outage management system, so we know what customers perhaps are out of service as a result of an effect of outage effect. So we'll start to see that that data is replicated and integrated across these different systems. Compatible units are used to design new infrastructure, perhaps a new neighborhood's going in, and you want to come up with some estimates for different design scenarios using compatible units. That information is stored in enterprise asset management system like Maximo, but it's very helpful in graphical design to have that information in GIS. Assets and equipment are common across many different systems. The meter, for example, a lot of times that meter is stored in our CIS system because we bill against it, right? We get our revenue based on our meter reads, and we bill our customers. Well, meters also need to be assets that we account for in our asset management register. Some needs to know information about transformers, and transformers also need to be in our GIS system to support network analysis and load balancing and things like that. So you can start to see that our asset registry in Maximo needs to be shared with some other systems within our enterprise. Work orders, the same case here where we have work orders in GIS. We want to see where those work orders are. We want to route our crews most effectively to work orders based on proximity. Work orders are created and managed in our work and asset management system. And we may want to send our work orders to mobile technology to our field crews so that they can execute that work and close work out. Same with service requests. A customer calls in about service. Our CIS system generally tracks service requests based on the customer call, but that service request may make its way over to mobile technology so that we can go and do some investigation, troubleshooting. That service request may need to be in our GIS system so we can track the proximity and route most efficiently to that service request. And then finally, resources. Our crews, our human resources. We need to understand where those are, what kind of skills we have, what kind of crafts we have, who's available to do a certain type of a job. So that's really important to have in our work and asset management system for scheduling and planning work orders. It's really important to have that in our mobile technology so we can assign work to the proper crew that has the right skills and know how to perform the work. So as you can see, enterprise data is really not owned by any one system, but rather shared across many different business systems. So essentially the data is an enterprise asset in itself. So what happens is these systems need to be integrated, and complex integration can often compromise data integrity, right? If I have different integrations that have different business rules or are built differently and maybe don't provide reports, discrepancies across these systems can occur and go unnoticed. So it's really important to have proper integration because integration is the lifeblood of making sure that this data is accurate and the integrity is there to support the business. So that's really where we come in, right? So GeoWorks is a platform that we provide that removes the complexity of integration and kind of ensures the integrity of this data so that it fully supports operations. We have off-the-shelf, fully supported connectors to various vendor technologies, CIS, GIS, EAM, outage, mobile, and other technologies as well. Our GeoWorks Sync software is a core technology that manages the data integration through synchronization business rules and reports any kind of discrepancies or anomalies between the data across these different systems. So that's a real critical solution to manage the information, make sure that things are synchronized, make sure that that data is accurate, that can support operations. And then GeoWorks Office, which is the focus of today's webinar, is end-user focused application. It's a Map-Centric application for working with data across different systems through one interface. So I'm in a single interface. I can see my GIS information through a Map-Centric view. I can overlay with that and interact with my work orders and service requests from Maximo, as well as asset work history and information. I can also use this information in the field or in a dispatch center, customer service center, and so forth. And then our third product is called GeoWorx Sketch, and this really helps with data integrity because it closes the gap between our field force and our back office. So I have crews out in the field. I need them to tell me what they've done to the infrastructure. They can sketch on a map, they can create a markup, they can indicate notes and things that they've done to the infrastructure, and then automatically send that back to my editors that then make the changes to the GIS database, and then we have that information from the field. In the past, a lot of field crews have maybe used paper map books that they mark up. Maybe they don't even mark up changes, and those go unnoticed. But it's real critical to bring that information from the field back into the office, and GeoWorx Sketch satisfies that requirement. So as you can see, all three of these products kind of work together, work independently, but then it can also come together to form a full platform, all focused around increasing data integrity and reliability of your enterprise data. Next slide kind of shows us where we are and where we're heading with our technology. So we have released connectors to various enterprise systems. Of course, we have connectors to Esri. We fully support the ArcGIS Online connection, ArcGIS server, and then of course directly to the Geo database, like ArcCatalog or ArcMap would do. We have off-the-shelf connectors for IBM Maximo and ABB Ellipse and Oracle Utilities 1.9. Where we're heading with things is on the Esri utility network. So Esri is coming out with some newer technology to help us manage utility information in a more realistic manner, and they have a new data model called the utility network, and we're starting to see some traction with this thing. We're currently in development to support the utility network today. We have some development going on, and we're actually going to be showing some of this at the Esri User Conference here in July. The next one is our SAP connector. We currently are building a connector to SAP EAM so that we can integrate and synchronize data from SAP. We do have a prototype of this that we've worked with one of our customers to synchronize customer information, address information between these two systems. And Oracle Utilities is coming out with some newer technology called Oracle Utilities version 2, and we're almost done with our connector for that product so that when Oracle customers move from 1.9 to version 2, they'll be able to upgrade and receive that new connector. And the interesting thing about this is that it will support all of the Oracle Utilities products, whether it's CCMB, Oracle WAM 1 or 2.0, 2.2, Meter Data Manager, MWM, and so forth, because all those products are built on the same foundation from Oracle, and our connector utilizes those APIs, and so we'll fully support all those products. And that's really exciting because now we can start to manage the meter in CCMB and have that synchronized with the meter perhaps in Maximo, and then of course the service premise in GIS. We do have an RDBMS connector that we're working on. This kind of opens the door to allow us to connect to generic databases. Maybe I have some data in a table. I want to connect that data into my enterprise systems. I want to synchronize that data. We can do it this way. Some legacy technologies may be built on SQL Server or Oracle. Maybe they don't have open APIs to talk to that system. With our RDBMS connector, we can simply connect to that table, identify the data fields that we want to synchronize with, and then set up the data set within GeoWorks Sync. Now looking at the plan, where are we heading, right? Where are we heading 2, 3, 4 years out, right? So One of the main exciting things that I'm excited about, I'm thrilled about, is this idea of a multi-sync. We're seeing more and more organizations wanting to share data across more than two systems, right? So today we can absolutely synchronize between Maximo and GIS bidirectionally, or Maximo and CCNB, or GIS and CCNB. It's the two systems, right? But in the future, what we'll have is multi-system synchronization, which means I can data set, or more than one system connected to each other that we can share data. And this is the case like the meter, right? So the meter is born in CCNB perhaps, or customer information system. That meter needs to go to EAM system, perhaps Maximo. But the meter is also managed as a point in GIS. And if I go into any one of those three systems and make a change or modify any information, I want that to, of course, synchronize with the other two systems. So this is a really important initiative at our company. Another really exciting initiative at our company is opening up the door to system integrators, developers, customers that want to build their own connectors and their own business logic for synchronization. So offering a public API and an SDK to allow an end user or a consultant or system integrator to build a connector to a specific system. Maybe there's a tier 2 vendor system out there that we want to connect to, but Geo Nexus, maybe it doesn't make sense for us to develop that connector because it's a small market perhaps, or maybe even a one-off system that a customer has. There would be an API or an SDK that allows individuals to then create those connectors. And then finally, with the movement of SaaS computing and cloud computing, we want to embrace that as well. So we're starting to see, and matter of fact, just this year we have a few projects of some Maximo customers that are implementing Maximo in the cloud and hosting Maximo in the cloud and GIS on-premise, and then they use our solution to kind of connect all that together. But now we're also starting to see a trend where more and more folks are moving to ArcGIS Online, for example. Maybe they're using a portal instance from Esri to start serving their information up into the cloud as a SaaS solution. And so we're going to follow suit with all of that, right? So we're going to provide GeoWorks platform as a service and allow these systems to continue to synchronize and integrate. And eventually I could see this all being out in the cloud where Geo Nexus could be hosting a integration platform connecting to a hosted Maximo platform connected to an ArcGIS Online. So I see that's kind of where things are heading. So a little bit about our company. We're about 9 years old now. I actually came out of the industry, the system integration industry. I worked for Esri for a number of years. I went into system integration consulting. I started Geo Nexus 9 years ago to focus on, specifically to focus on productizing the integration. In the past, when we've had customers with custom integrations, when they upgrade their Maximo system or upgrade their GIS system, those integrations would break, right? So what we want to do here and what we're doing is we're offering a fully supported platform that will grow with you and scale with you so that when you upgrade your respective systems, you'll just simply get an update from us. So it's a much more robust architecture and model to go with. And we have over 43 licensed customers around the world. First of all, we're based here in Ann Arbor, Michigan, but we have some field offices with sales and some developers remotely. But the majority of us are based here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. But we do have a global reach, right? So we have 41 active licensed customers globally. We do have customers in Australia that we're currently active with. We have a customer in UAE that's using our technology. And we have a few in Canada, and then most of the others are in the United States. We have business partners with all Tier 1 vendors, and we're looking to establish more business partnerships with vendors that are interested in working with us so that we can adapt our technology to theirs. And we do have an authorized reseller that we established in this year in Australia that's representing our company and our technology to support our customers there in that country. So at this point, we'll take a pause and we'll post a polling question. Are your Maximo and GIS systems integrated? And if you could take a minute to fill out our poll, then we'll continue the webinar. All right, thank you for doing the polling question. We'll move into the next slide here in our webinar. I want to talk about the challenges, right? The three challenges that we're seeing with managing T&D assets in Maximo. Number one, finding the correct asset for a work order. Number two, duplicate service requests for single incidents. And number three, locating work along a linear asset like a 100-foot pipe. These are challenges that we come across quite a bit. We hear from our customers that they are confronted with some of these challenges. So the first one, finding the correct asset for a work order. It's really important, right, that we have the correct asset assigned to our work order so that we can charge the right amount of time. We can charge our cost to materials, our labor, and all of that to that asset, because over time we want to see how much we've spent on certain assets. And so it's really important that we find the right asset and assign it to that work order. And there may be more than one asset that we work on that work order as well. So traditionally out of the box, if you look at Maximo, right, you may have 150,000 hydrants in Maximo. We have a customer with 1 million poles in Maximo, 50,000 valves, 200,000 pipes. So you have lots of data when you're talking about T&D assets. There's just a huge amount of data that we're managing in our asset and location module in Maximo. So if I'm on a work order and I'm creating a work order for a leaking hydrant, for example, and I go and select value, I'm confronted with thousands and thousands of options to pick. And so how do I know which one to pick out of that? So that's a challenge. That's a challenge, and so we have some ways to mitigate that challenge. The next challenge that we hear quite a bit about is, I have duplicate work orders, I have duplicate service requests in Maximo. Maybe in the case of this example, there's a transformer that's on fire on a street, Oak Street. Customer at 521 Oak Street calls in and reports that incident, and a customer at 524, a different customer, the neighbor calls in and talks to a different customer service rep and reports the same problem. Now I have customer service reps going into Maximo creating service requests and having the same incident, the same problem. And worst case scenario, we're sending multiple investigators or multiple people. And this is true. This happens all the time with utilities, is that they're rolling in multiple trucks to a location, and of course that costs quite a bit of time and inefficiencies. The third scenario here is working on linear assets. And so we may have a linear asset, perhaps it's a 100-foot ductile iron pipe, but we repaired a break at the front 10 feet of it, right? So we want to show and link that work order with the cost, the materials, the time that we performed on that asset, and locate that, at the right position on that asset, especially when it comes to main breaks. We need to know where those main breaks are occurring along those assets. So next we're going to go into another polling question, and we'll just take a minute for this as well. Do you experience any of these challenges in your organization? If you could just take a second and complete the polling question, that would be great. Okay, great. So now I want to talk a little bit about the solution architecture. This is a slide that we use quite a bit to kind of show where GeoWorks fits into the architecture that you may have for your Maximo and GIS system. On the left-hand side is the Esri technology stack. You typically have a GIS data stored, your geodatabase, maybe that's an Oracle or SQL Server, uses ArcGIS server technology to serve that information out to your users. You probably have editors that use ArcGIS desktop or maybe ArcFM to manage that infrastructure information in the geodatabase. And then you want to serve this information out to your end users that can access and create maps and do analysis on that data, and perhaps you're using ArcGIS Online or Portal to get that information out into the user community. And then there's some mobile technology, perhaps Survey123 or ArcGIS Collector to bring that information and updates back into the system. Well, that's an enterprise system in itself, right? Your Esri system is an enterprise system in itself. And you also have Maximo as your enterprise work and asset management system. So you have a complete asset registry, you have your work orders, service requests, maybe you're using it for inventory, parts, you're managing your crews and your resources, maybe your tools are in Maximo. And then, of course, you have a Maximo application server that serves this information out to the Maximo users using the front end of Maximo. You may have Maximo Spatial, which will allow you to have a map inside of Maximo to see the current record that you're looking at. You know, you're on an asset or you're on a work order and you want to see where that's located. There's a map tab that can provide that to you. You may have a mobile Maximo technology to take work orders and service requests into the field. You may create and update and close out work in the field and bring that information back in through a variety of mobile technologies. So where we sit, right, is in between this loosely coupled integration, fully productized integration with GeoWorks Sync to provide the data level integration. So if I'm creating new assets, I'm creating new features in GIS, those become assets or locations in Maximo. If I'm updating information in Maximo, it synchronizes back to GIS. I can use any mobile technology I'd like, and it'll update its respective system, and GeoWorks Sync will make sure that that data is synchronized fully between those two systems. And then we have GeoWorks Office, which allows us to interact with data from each of those systems through a single Map-Centric viewer application that's very easy to use and allows me easy access to these two systems. So that's kind of our recommended architecture moving forward. And again, this webinar is to focus on GeoWorks Office. So we'll move in and talk a little bit more about GeoWorks Office for Maximo. It's a standalone Map-Centric viewer. It's actually built using Web App Builder from Esri, so it's supported by ArcGIS Online or Portal. Those are the tools from Esri that we consume the feature services and map services from. It supports IBM Maximo through the REST API. We communicate with Maximo through REST at 7.5 and 7.6. It's important to point out it's a live connection between these two systems. So I'm seeing live data. When I create a work order or service request within GeoWorks Office, it immediately goes to Maximo, and if I make a change in Maximo, this application immediately sees that latest information presented to me. I can do a number of things. I can look at my GIS infrastructure. I can click on an asset and see specifications for that asset from Maximo presented in this application. I can look at work order history. If I click on a hydrant, for example, I can see when it was last flushed. If I click on a pole, I can see the last inspection dates. If I have that in Maximo, it will present it to me. I can create work orders and service requests from the map. So I can simply select the assets of interest and go ahead and create. And so I'm ensured to have the right asset assigned to that work order. And attaching assets to existing work. So maybe I have a work order already created, right, but I want to add assets to that work order, I can use the map to help me find those assets and select those assets, and then of course assign them to that existing work order. So what are the benefits of GeoWorks Office that we're seeing today? Number one, reducing the duplicate service requests. We can use GeoWorks Office in the call center or maybe dispatch center where they can quickly see existing work orders and service requests that are created. So one CSR will identify quickly that another CSR already created a service request for the same problem just by using the map to screen existing work and service requests. So that greatly reduces the potential for duplicates. And then ensuring that the correct asset is assigned to the work order by selecting the asset from the map. If I can actually go to a work order and select the asset that I know is the right asset on the map, I'm assured to have work, materials, cost, labor roll up to the proper asset. And then increasing the accuracy of my work location by dragging a work order symbol on the map to the proper location where the work was performed. Using the Map-Centric tool to allow me to do that is very helpful. So next, we're going to move into the demonstration portion of our webinar. I'm going to walk through the scenarios, and then Lindsay's going to actually show you how those scenarios would be executed using GeoWorks Office, and we'll do it one by one. So the first scenario is attaching a work order to the proper asset. So this scenario goes like this. A customer calls in about a problem, perhaps it's water in the street or in their yard. A customer service rep persona would then use GeoWorks Office to locate the premise and then create a Maximo service request at that premise location, because at this point in time we're not sure what the problem asset is, but we just know that something's going on. The field investigator will then respond to that service request, travel to the incident, and identify that yes, there is a leaking hydrant that needs to be addressed. They would radio back to the supervisor to create a work order so that we can assign a hydrant crew to come out and make that repair. The supervisor would use Maximo to convert the service request to a work order. Then the supervisor could then use GeoWorks Office, which is spawned from Maximo, zoomed into the proper location, and they can move the work order to the actual hydrant asset. So now that work order is attached to the proper asset that they're going to repair, then the crew can actually use this tool, GeoWorks Office, to quickly find the hydrant and where they need to be routed to fix that hydrant, as well as attaching any other assets that they work on to that existing work order. So maybe in the scope of fixing the hydrant, they have to replace a valve or fix the hydrant lateral, and we want to charge time to those as well. The crew could use a very simple Map-Centric tool to go ahead and click on those features from the map and make sure that those assets are attached to the work order as well. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Lindsay, and she'll walk us through the scenario.
Thank you, Skip. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here. And first, I'm just going to give you a brief introduction to GeoWorks Office before we go into our first scenario. So as you can see, we're in Esri's web app builder for ArcGIS. So you can do all the things that you would normally do with a web map. I could select, let's say this is a hydrant. I could select a hydrant and view that feature information there. I could go ahead and view in an attribute table, all the normal functionality. You can also see there's a layer on this map with some triangles and other things. These are work orders, these red triangles. So I can actually click on that as well. And I clicked on the wrong one. There. So I can click on the work order as well and view the work order information. There we go. But if I actually want to interact with this work order or edit this work order or create a work order, etc., I need to log in to our tool over here, GeoWorks Office. So I'm going to log in, and this login information is my Maximo credentials. So I'm going to go ahead and click Sign In. And now that we're logged in, the great thing about being inside of Esri's Web App Builder is that we can leverage all the free tools that Esri offers. For instance, you can use the Network Trace tool, which is up here. You can also view the legend, so you can get acquainted with what's on this map. So we have work orders, service requests are the purple stars, and we have water-related assets on this map. Now we'll go back to GeoWorks Office, which is our widget that sits up in the right-hand corner. Once you click on it, it opens up. You can see at the top that you can choose your site. So if you need to support multiple sites, those would be listed here. There's also filtering functionality that's available. These filters can be set up in Maximo, or you can set up a filter directly from the map. So I'm going to select work orders and work order status, and we'll just look at the completed work orders. And as you can see, some of the work orders disappeared, and we're left with these green triangles, which means that these are completed work orders. So I'm going to clear that out. There's 5 different modules in GeoWorks Office: assets, locations, service addresses, work orders, and service requests. Assets and locations and service addresses work in a similar way. You can just view details. So if I wanted to view details, let's say for this hydrant, I can click on that and easily see the asset information here. There's also asset specifications. So if you want to see the bonnet color, the rated flow, etc. There's also location information. There can be service address information or related records as well.
And it's important to point out that this data is coming live from Maximo. So we're simply presenting data from Maximo, data that's already in your asset registry. So clicking on the hydrant, getting the specification information from Maximo, getting the work order history from Maximo, and so forth. So we're not duplicating the data, we're representing the data directly from Maximo.
And then the work order and service request modules operate similarly. They have the ability to view details, create, record, or move. And we're going to show all of that functionality in the scenarios, so I'll skip over that for now, and I'll go ahead and go into that first scenario that Skip described. So in this first scenario, I'm a customer service rep, and a customer has called in to report water in their yard. So I'm going to ask for their address and type it into the geocoder up here. And it'll automatically zoom to that spot on the map. And I see there's no work in this area, so I'm going to go ahead and create a service request for this water in their yard. We don't know exactly where it's coming from, so I'm going to go ahead and create the service request on the service address. And I'm going to confirm that this matches the address they gave me, and it does. So we're going to go over here to the service request module and click Create. And you can see in the creation options, there's 5 different options, but the one we're going to use right now is select service address from map. So I will select that service address, click Next. I can set my priority, and I can put in a summary and details. And I can click Next. And another something to point out at this point is that this panel is configurable, so if there are other things that are required by Maximo, that can be configured here as well. I'm going to go ahead and create, and you'll see that a purple star showed up on that service address. So at this point, I would give the customer the service request number for their reference. And now I'm the field investigator that we sent out to go look at this, and they discover that it is the hydrant in the yard causing the problem. So they call their supervisor, who is in the office and using Maximo. And I'm going to grab this service request number that the field investigator would have. And in the office, the supervisor is going to look up that service request number. And now that they know what's wrong and what needs to be done, they're going to create a work order.
Because in many cases, they want to create a work order to assign it to a hydrant crew, for example, and those folks would then charge their time to that work order. So they're using the out-of-the-box functionality to simply create a work order from the service request that was generated from the customer call.
Then I'm going to go ahead and go to that work order, and I'm going to assign an owner to that who's actually going to go out and do the work. And then another great thing is that since I'm at this page, I can go up here and this green symbol says Show in GeoWorx Office. I can click that, and it'll take me to GeoWorx Office, and it's going to take me to that service address. And I can actually assign the correct asset to that work order.
So notice, I just want to jump in here real quick because it's important to point out that there's a red triangle at that premise right now because we created the work order in Maximo. Automatically the symbol gets shown on the map. So you don't need to create it from the map, but you'll see the symbol on the map.
So the work order is already selected, so I'm going to click Next, and then we're assigning it to a hydrant. So I'm going to select the hydrant that the person in the field has told me is the correct asset. Click Next, record, and the work order is going to automatically move over to that hydrant.
You mean to refresh the map too?
I missed an important step. I didn't mark it as primary, so it will not move over there. But we'll continue without that. Or we're going to try it again. And you can just click Mark as Primary, and it's going to move over there now. Good thing we have our developer in the room. All right. So now I am the field crew, and I'm out in the field, and I'm actually going to go do the work on this hydrant. And I've already logged the crew, and I'm already at the asset. So I am going to perform the work on this hydrant, and I realize that we also need to perform some work on the hydrant lateral connected to it. So I will go ahead and grab that work order again. Click Next.
So the record functionality that she's showing, it allows us to record additional assets from the map onto that existing work order.
And click Next and record. So now we can actually, you wouldn't do this out in the field, but just to show you that occurred, we're going to go into Maximo and view to see that both assets are related to this work order. So now we're in the work order in Maximo, and you can see up top the hydrant up here. And then if we go below, I went too far.
Oh, this is the other arrow on the left there.
You can see that this lateral line is also associated with that work order. So the final thing we're going to do out in the field here is we're going to actually complete this work. So I've selected the work order, and you can actually edit this work order. So there are many reasons you might want to edit a work order, but what we're going to do right now is we're going to edit the status of the work order. And I mark that as completed. And click Save. And I know this might not fit everybody's workflow. Like I mentioned before, GeoWorks Office is configurable, so you can have this functionality turned off if you'd like. But now we have that completed. I can refresh the page, and it turned green because that work order is now complete. So now we're going to go back to Skip, and he's going to explain this second scenario that we're going to go through.
Great, thank you, Lindsay. The second demonstration scenario that we want to talk about is placing a work order at the correct geographic location along a linear asset, perhaps along 200-foot or 100-foot pipe. We want to show exactly where we did that work. So a customer will call in again about water in the streets. The customer service rep will locate that premise. And in this case, we're actually going to use GeoWorks Office to go ahead and create a work order right against that pipe asset. We'll bypass the service request stage and just allow the user of GeoWorks Office to create a work order right against that asset by selecting it on the map. Then the supervisor will assign a crew. The crew will use GeoWorks Office, number one, to see where that work order is and navigate to that work location. But more importantly, we're going to actually allow the crew to drag that work order symbol from its default location, which is the centroid of the linear segment, to the actual location where they perform the work, so that we can have a better, a more accurate representation of where that work occurred along that linear asset. Lindsay?
All right. So I'm the customer service rep, and I get the call in about a reported leak on a main. So I'm going to type in the address up in the geocoder, and we'll zoom there. And we know that this is the main that needs the work order, so I'm going to go ahead and create the work order directly on that main. Select the priority and the work type, and put a description, leak on main, and we'll create. And as Skip mentioned before, this work order is created on the centroid or center point of that asset, but that's not where the actual work needs to occur. So we're going to go ahead and move that work order. So we're going to use our move functionality. Super easy, you just select, you grab it, you move it to the point along the asset of where the work needs to be completed or has been completed, and you can save to the new location. And you can see it was that easy, that quick, it moved and it's already there. So now we'll go and do the third and final scenario here.
Thanks, Lindsay. So wrapping up with our third scenario and final scenario, we just want to show something real quick about how GeoWorks Office can be used to screen out existing work orders and service requests so that we don't create duplicates, so we reduce the potential for duplicates. So a customer calls in about watering the street. Customer service rep uses GeoWorks Office to locate the street where the incident is occurring. The customer service rep notices that there's an existing work order already created with a description that matches the problem that the customer is reporting. And then we're going to report to that customer that we already know about this problem. Here's the work order number. And then we move forward, and so we didn't create a duplicate service request to go and investigate something we're already working on at that location.
All right, thanks, Skip. So again, I'm the customer service rep, and a customer calls to report a leak at an intersection, and I get the closest address to that intersection. And we'll zoom there. And so they told me that the intersection was Ewing Street and West Benton. So I can see here that there's already a work order there. So I'm going to select the work order because we don't know if this is the same issue that the customer is calling about. I'm going to select it. We can view the information about this work order, and we can see that it is described as a leaking main. It was reported last week, and the target start is going to be actually tomorrow. So we're confident that this is the work order for what the customer is complaining about, so I can go ahead and just give that work order number to the customer, and they can rest easy that it's being worked on. So this is great because we have now avoided creating a duplicate work order for this leak. All right, so we're going to finish up with a quick summary from Skip.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. And we'll finalize a summary here, and then we'll move into some questions and answers. But just in summary, I want to point out some takeaways here. First off, hopefully we've communicated that the solution can greatly improve asset management practices, make the data more reliable and accurate. We're reporting work orders against the right asset that we worked on to have better cost roll-up, better accuracy. We're actually locating work orders exactly where they occurred geographically. And we're able to keep our systems synchronized and the data integrity accurate and trustworthy across the enterprise. We also wanted to point out that this is a solution, I think, that fits a specific user profile, or a number of user profiles, really. There may be a tier of users in your organization that might benefit from a simple-to-use Map-Centric view into Maximo. So maybe these are users that don't necessarily need to go into Maximo to do heavy analysis or planning and scheduling or reporting or heavy asset management functionality that Maximo is great at delivering. But perhaps they just need a simple tool to look at the data, create a work order, create a service request, maybe look at work history, maybe assign a feature from GIS as an asset to a work order. It might be helpful for customer service reps, supervisors, dispatchers, field crew, and managers that need a very simple, straightforward tool to allow them to be effective and efficient at their job. And then the third thing we want to make sure everyone understands is that this is a fully supported platform, supported by our company. We have a number of users that are using this technology, and we're expanding and scaling to future functionality and future value through other integrations, other software integrations, multi-synchronization, and cloud computing in the future. So in summary, that's what I would like to say thank you for joining our webinar. We're going to move into a Q&A period. So I'll turn it back over to Lindsay.
Thanks, Skip. Before we do a couple questions and answers, I'm going to just let you know that we're attending a few upcoming events. We'll be at the Esri User Conference in July out in San Diego. Our booth number is number 209. We'll also be at the Maximo Utility Working Group Conference. That's out in Portland this fall. And finally, we're going to be at the GeoConnect conference. So please stop by and see us. We'd love to meet you in person. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Akshata, and she's going to read a couple questions that we got through the presentation.
Does it only support ArcGIS Online?
It is supported by ArcGIS Online and Portal as well.
So, what versions of Esri and Maximo are currently supported?
So for Esri, it's 10.1 plus, and for Maximo, it's 7.5 and 7.6, and we'll continue to support beyond that.
So there was another question linking to that. What happens when there are newer versions, and how do you support them?
Yeah, I'll take this question. So it's a fully supported product, right? So we're constantly maintaining it, increasing the functionality, providing patches and bug fixes. So we'll continue to support future technologies from both IBM and Maximo. A lot of our customers are on a support and maintenance plan with us. So with that support and maintenance plan, they're getting the updates, they're getting the patches, they're getting the next version to support the next version of Maximo or the next version of Esri. So again, it's a fully supported and maintained product.
All right, if there's no other questions, we're going to finish up here. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Just so you know, this webinar was recorded and will be available afterwards. And if you have any questions, please email us at info@geo-nexus.com. Thank you so much. Have a great day.